Hey guys, sorry that this keeps happening, that we keep meeting like this, but we had a whole flurry of technical issues with this episode between internet and computer and microphone and audio issues. About 2/3 through the episode, Cole's microphone switches on accident due to some issues, so we apologize for that. I did my best to fix everything, so hopefully it is still just as good and entertaining of an episode as always, but we do apologize for the technical issues, and I promise this will not become a regular thing. We've just had 2 weeks of bad luck, so with that being said, enjoy the episode, and may the Force be with you, always.
Woo! Got it. Let's get out of here. Hit it. Yeah.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Mortis FM, a Star Wars podcast. I am Grayson, and with me is my best friend Cole. How are you doing, my friend?
I am nothing short of superb. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's been a little bit since Ahsoka has wrapped up. And like we promised, like we said, we're going to do a little bit of a retrospective. I think we've had enough time to let it simmer, to hear other people's opinions on the matter, things like that. But before we get into that, if anybody who is listening to this now kind of keeps up on social media, I was actually on Tony, Star Wars Sith 66 on Instagram. I was on his podcast for Sith Talk, and Cole will be on it next week. But I teased a little new thing that we are going to do that was, honestly, it was completely Cole's idea. He got it from Star Wars Explained, Alex and Molly over there. And this is basically, we're going to do this for every episode going forward until we run out. And then if we run out, we may just start them over again. But this is a chat pack that has 125 conversation cards. It was published by Insight Editions, written by Kelly Knox. And so there's a bunch of different subcategories of different conversation starters with just Star Wars conversations. And they're really good questions. So I did one of those with Tony. So if anybody wants to know that one, you can go check that out. It was a very long but very good 2-hour discussion. And now me and Cole are gonna keep the trend going. So I'm gonna grab one of these.
So just before you do,
okay,
would you want to do this like potentially at the end of each episode? As to wrap up the episode in like a neat little bow.
Sure. Okay. Re-strategizing. We're gonna do this after we talk. We're gonna do it as the end of the episode.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Cool. All right. So I'm leaving you in suspense. We're gonna talk about Ahsoka now. Yeah. So, man, we did not take any notes or anything. Like before this, we just kind of wanted it to be very like freeform and just talk about like the entirety of the show. It has been over a week since Ahsoka has ended. How do you feel about the show? Kind of how it compares to other Star Wars shows, just how it made you feel, which I think is an important thing. How are you feeling on? You feeling good, bad, somewhere in the middle?
Right. So
about Ahsoka.
In this retrospective phase, post Ahsoka, it's been the same case with every other show that you and I have seen, like relative to Star Wars, that like we always need some time to sit with it. And I think this is really one of the only ones where I feel basically the same as I felt from when we first watched it. I still feel that, like even after sitting with it, that Ahsoka is just a very it's just kind of a definitive Star Wars show, I feel great about it. I mean, it doesn't. It's not at the top of my list. I think it probably sits in terms of live action shows. I think it sits in like the third position. Second position being exclusively Mando season 1, and then Andor at the top.
So you said Mando season 1 goes above Ahsoka?
Yeah,
for you?
that's
okay.
that's how I'm feeling right now. But at the same time, Ahsoka also does better. It does specific things better than any other show, which is being Star Warsy, I think. Like,
yes,
in the sense of adhering to what we acknowledge Star Wars as, kind of like its core themes and stuff like that.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, sitting with it, I'm very pleased with the way that it was executed. Obviously, you and I kind of had these kind of apprehensions about Heartbreak Hill, where some Star Wars shows like have a tendency to be really good, and then the finale, it's like they fell down the stairs. And Ahsoka didn't feel like that for me. Ahsoka, I mean, obviously there was a lot left to be desired, but at the same time, that was very intentional. The story is very much going to be continued, and so I think in this season 1 of Ahsoka, I feel like they did exactly what they set out to do, and I thought that it was executed masterfully. Obviously, do we have some parts about the show that, you know, we probably wished had been done a little bit different? Yeah, but that's the case with every show. And so I think ultimately, if I could leave it down to a very simple statement, I am satisfied.
I'm in complete agreement with you, which is no surprise. We often do this, but no, you're completely right.
We just validate each other.
Yeah, it's so true. For me, you said it perfectly, where it's like, you know, are there things that we could probably like, oh man, I wish they did this differently or whatever. Like, listen, at the end of the day, I could do that with literally every Star Wars project. If I really set my mind to it, I could be like, man, I wish they did this different in Empire Strikes Back. Like, why did Luke and Leia kiss? Oh, they should have thought ahead of that. Or like, you know, Return of the Jedi, it's like, man, like, why do they got all these dumb teddy bears? They're not dumb. I love them. But, you know, like, I could go on and on and on. And I'm like, I just don't like to do that. Obviously, I want to be, you know, a little bit critical of Star Wars because I want it to be like, I want it to improve. And I think that might be good for creators, but there's a lot of people that kind of take it too far and then just get to the point where they're like, they have such a specific idea on what Star Wars is that they won't let go of it. And you and I, our constant message throughout the show is like, do not forsake the journey for the destination, you know? And I even saw people do that with the finale, which, granted, we said in our episode 8 kind of discussion last week that like we did feel a little underwhelmed because we were like, oh, we really thought we were going to get more with Baylan and Shin, but like you said, it was clearly intentional, you know. I mean, you know, it depends on what happens after the actors strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike. But I do feel that at some point we will get an Ahsoka season 2 that will kind of be the branching story path. And I'm excited for that. I feel like they told the story that they needed to with this season, with developing Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship, getting to Peridia, getting Ezra back, and getting Thrawn to the galaxy. I think that checks all the boxes, and now we're going to get more, you know. And that's honestly, I gotta say, I'm more excited for what's happening there than I am with the Thrawn stuff. I mean,
me too.
Yeah, like I can't say that I'm not like excited about Thrawn. Obviously, like that's gonna be really cool. But like you and I, we're big fantasy guys. We love our Lord of the Rings. We love our Harry Potter. We love our Elder Scrolls. The list goes on and on and on. And like you said, Ahsoka does a really good job of like feeling very Star Warsy, but then it also takes some of like the really weird and wacky stuff in Star Wars and makes it even more so. And I like that, you know. That's what I like about Star Wars in general, right? Is like there are many subgenres to Star Wars. At its core, obviously Star Wars is a space fantasy epic, but like something like Andor is like, well, let's focus on these people that don't have the Force and don't have lightsabers, and they're trying to fight this oppressive organization, and it's like very much a slow burn. Like I like that, but then on the flip side, I like the big battles of Clone Wars. And like the you know, the cool like Master and Apprentice and lightsaber fights. Like I love it all, man. Like I just like it all. And so Ahsoka
so
really
much to appreciate.
Yeah, like I think people need to realize that different shows are doing different things. Like I've always viewed I've always viewed The Mandalorian. You mentioned season 1. I was just thinking about it today. I was like, I think I may like Mandalorian season 1 just slightly better than season 2. And it's because in retrospect, I think people were disappointed with Mando season 1 when it came out because people were like, man, like, where's the story going with this? And to me, it felt like the goal of The Mandalorian was it is a weekly serial. Just like what George based Star Wars on, you know, your Flash Gordon and your, I think, is it Buck Rogers and all of the stuff, like the old school, like kind of 50s and 60s American graffiti era of like, you know, radio shows of like, tune in next week when it's like they're going on a different adventure like every week. That's 100%. What Mandalorian feels like. And I love that, right? Ahsoka's not trying to do that. Andor's not trying to do that. That's not what Clone Wars was. So every show kind of has their different goal. And the goal that Ahsoka set out to do, I think it did really well, of bringing in really cool, fantastical, mythical, fantasy elements into Star Wars and just really doubling down on that. And I think that's what I loved about it most, honestly.
Yeah, I could not have said that better myself. In fact, I think a lot of the problem with these kinds of, not exactly the problem with the shows. I think the problem with how people react to the shows is that a lot of people have this preconception of what, you know, quote, Star Wars is supposed to be, you know? And even though Ahsoka fits the bill of being Star Warsy, the thing is, from the beginning, Star Wars was always wacky and weird. Like, at its time, it was one of the weirdest things to come out, like, in theaters, you know? Like this sci-fi space epic where you go into like this bar and there's a bunch of aliens saying stuff that you don't even know, and like an alien sits down and talks to one of the main characters like, oh, like, dude, like, I mean, it wasn't, you know, not everybody loved it at the time. And I saw this tweet that said, dude, if the Star Wars movie, like if the original trilogy came out today, people would tear into them. And they would. Dude. They would destroy those movies. Like some guy made the same argument about how like people made a lot of complaints about how one of the Praetorian Guards daggers like vanishes in Snoke's throne room. And then he compared it to the scene in Return of the Jedi where Luke kicks this dude from yards away and he falls away. And see, the thing is like people will find ways to make excuses for anything. They will chastise the dagger being gone, but then they'll say, "Oh, Luke used a force kick." Are you kidding me? Yeah. Are you kidding me? Like it's really just the rose tinted glasses. And so anyway, my point about Star Wars being wacky is like there's been this conception about what Star Wars is supposed to be, and Ahsoka fits that bill. Mm-hmm. But just because other shows don't, that doesn't mean that they're any less than. You know, Star Wars isn't supposed to be like this one specific thing. You can have something be a lot similar to like the original trilogy and the prequels or whatever, but it was always this embrace of the strange or embrace of the different, of the unique. And so when someone tells me that like Andor is not, you know, Star Warsy, it's like, well, are you really getting the point?
Yeah. Like the point is to stray away from the kind of things that's like in the original trilogy, right? Like, it's, and that's kind of one thing is why I love like Clone Wars, for example, is I feel like Clone Wars does an amazing job of doing all kinds of different stuff. Oh, right?
Yeah. Like it's all over the place, but in a good way.
Right. Like you're getting obviously your big and epic battles, and then you're getting kind of like your more quaint stories. You're getting great Jedi and Sith stories. You're getting underworld stories, like, you know, these really deep like military stories. I mean, it's literally like all, and then you get the Mortis gods in the Clone Wars that are literally like some of the most wild out there stuff, right? Which we're now seeing with Ahsoka, and it's awesome, right? Dude, and so yeah,
Clone Wars has. You're 100% right. I never really thought about it that way. Clone Wars has stuff in Star Wars for everybody. You've got the big battle episodes. You've got the Jedi versus Sith episodes. You have the droid like C-3PO and R2-D2 episodes.
Yeah.
You have political episodes with Padme, and then you also have you've got Jar Jar episodes, and then you have episodes where Darth Maul is decapitating people with lightsabers.
Right.
Like, it is all over the place, but it's like it all feels cohesive because
Right.
anything can happen in that universe, you know?
Yeah, I think you mentioned like how people, we both said it, how like people kind of have their own specific idea of what Star Wars is.
Yeah.
Like the original trilogy, like I think people are conditioned to the weirdness. So when then more weird things are added nowadays, they're like, oh, that's not Star Wars. Like that's too weird for Star Wars. I'm like, you're right. Star Wars has always been weird. Let's embrace the weird. Like I imagine like a Return of the Jedi, right? Like if it was today, like, oh, what? They can shoot lightning out of their hands now? Like, what is this garbage?
What is that?
Like, yeah, like, oh, like he can just, he's just stronger than Luke and doesn't use a lightsaber. Like, bro, like, what is this, man? And it's like, we are so people, and I could do it myself, is like we can be so kind of close-minded and tunnel vision on what Star Wars is, and it's like, I mean, if anybody knows kind of like the grand scope of Star Wars, it's going to be Dave Filoni, right? Like, I mean, he's literally the apprentice of George Lucas. And that's not to say that other people don't, because that's the thing, is I think you and I, and this is why I've always kind of I'm starting to push this more and more, is we grew up on a lot of different stories, on books, on comics, on video games. That was not just, they weren't just trying to kind of copy the original trilogy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've got Republic Commando, which is kind of like a military tactical game, and you've got The Force Unleashed, which is just crazy force powers, and you've got KOTOR, where you can go in all of these different routes, and as well as the Old Republic, and then you've got like books like Plagueis, which gets into the old Sith lore, and then it's just these Legends books really, like, those I feel like conditioned me for today, where I'm like, Star Wars is not just the Skywalker saga, it's not like, and you and I would always talk about like some of our favorite subsections of Star Wars, like whether it be like the clones, or like Imperial Commandos, or what have you, or like ancient Sith stuff, or other dark side religions, or whatever. And so like we always talk about like, a lot of people, like, they love the political stuff, or like, dude, the space battles, that's their thing, right?
Yeah.
Like they love like Rogue Squadron and all of the different like X-wing squadrons and starships and stuff. People are really into like the naval, like the fleet battles,
Dude,
that's an
they
entire
go crazy over that.
Yeah, like that's an entire different subgenre of Star Wars. I mean, there was a reason why, although it's canned now, they were doing a Rogue Squadron movie. Like the goal of that was to be like a Top Gun Star Wars, right?
Rest in
like
peace, Rogue Squadron.
Dude, I mean, maybe it can come back. I'd love to see, like, no hate to Patty Jenkins. Second Wonder Woman was awful, but I think she'd be a really good producer, at least, on that movie. But yeah, like, I love when Star Wars goes all over the place. So, like, when Andor is like this political espionage thriller, like kind of like your Jason Bourne and kind of just like dark and in the mud sort of stuff, I'm like, I like this. But then when we go to something like Ahsoka, which genuinely, Ahsoka is the polar opposite, I love that too, because you've got your big lightsaber battles, and you've got your awesome starfighter dogfights, and it literally, like, Ahsoka has a lot, but then like it really, I think the emphasis of Ahsoka is the wacky and weird stuff, and I just think the more weird it got, the more I loved it,
Well, the thing is, like, if Star Wars wasn't different from anything else that was coming out at the time, it wouldn't have been loved. Star Wars was loved because it was different. And it taught us to embrace the unique, the wacky, the strange. And then for whatever reason, its fans decided that there was a status quo to be established. Yeah. They became conditioned. And I mean, I'll be willing to admit, even at some point, like, I became conditioned to like, like it was years ago when our views of Star Wars were challenged, with some of the sequel films, that like we thought that Star Wars was this one, specific thing. Yeah. And I think in doing that, we kind of lost sight of what it originally taught us, which was to just, embrace the cool and the mystical, and be here for the changes, for the hills and the valleys, like everything that comes with it. So, I mean, also Star Wars is just so incredibly vast as a universe. So, like, to say that one specific element or theme is just going to be the only thing that happens. I mean, if they released the same thing every single time, the reason why people love Andor so much is because it's so different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I have to say about that. Let's talk about Ahsoka, huh?
Yeah. I think that's kind of like the retrospective thing is a lot of people are, I think it makes sense. It makes sense why we're bringing this up. I'm not trying to like make this like an analyzation of Andor or anything, but it's like Andor is basically like the total 180 of Ahsoka. And that's great. Like it's great that they're on two different sides of the spectrum because that's cool to me. I like going into these different things, and so, but yeah, like I feel I think just in kind of embracing that stuff has really made me appreciate all of Star Wars more. And I think, I think I'm seeing more and more people like once they kind of open their mind, which is kind of I feels like a very Yoda thing of like, just like opening your mind to these things. Like people are really liking Ahsoka, like the Night Sisters bringing back stormtroopers from the dead and giant statues and like, and of course, like a different galaxy with these whales and stuff like that. Like it's really cool stuff. But yeah, like I think for me, Ahsoka is probably up there in like I'd say probably like number 3 in terms of my live action shows. I really am just excited for a second season. I want the story to continue. It's just a matter of whether it's going to come after the Heir to the Empire movie or the Thrawn movie, its tentative title, or if it's going to come before. And I feel like it has to come after because I think I'm going to feel a lot like the same way that I did with Mando season 2 and Book of Boba Fett if they just quickly bring Ahsoka and Sabine back to the main galaxy to fight Thrawn. I'm going to feel a little gypped because the end I was like, oh man, like, the end of season 2 of Mando, like when Grogu left Mando, I was like, oh wow, that was such a good ending. And then it was quickly kind of sped along by Book of Boba Fett. If they do that with the Heir to the Empire movie, I'm going to be like, like I wish they didn't do that because I like the idea of Ahsoka and Sabine and Baylan and Shin being off doing their own story, and now Ezra and Hera and more of our main characters have to now fight Thrawn. I don't know how you feel about that though.
No, I agree to no surprise. I think it was kind of told to us, in the last episode where Ahsoka basically tells Sabine like it's time for us to move on. Like our place is meant to be here. And so I think that honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Ahsoka wasn't really present for this Heir to the Empire movie.
Yeah. That's kind of my hope right now. Yeah.
And well, I hope that she's not, only if we get that season 2 first.
Yeah.
I would prefer to get Ahsoka season 2 first before this movie. Like if you want to have him in there, by all means, that's fine. But I think the thing is that whatever's going on in Peridia with, Baylan and the Mortis gods, right? I think that deserves a second season.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely not meant to be a side plot in a movie. And said side plot would probably take like very far backstage.
And it would just confuse audiences as well.
It would confuse audiences, and at the same time, it would also be like way too much. I don't think you can fit that in a movie.
No.
All of that. I mean, Thrawn and Mortis gods and Peridia and, like everything whatever Thrawn wants to do. At this point in time, they are no longer connected. It was more like two paths that ran perpendicular to each other. They intersected briefly, and now they're branching off. I feel like that was probably what that was for.
Yeah.
But just real fast, when you were mentioning earlier that it was similar to Yoda, almost saying like people to open your minds to different parts of Star Wars. I just imagine his actual quote saying, "You must unlearn what you have learned."
Right.
Which is, to just kind of embrace the things that you thought you knew but you actually don't.
Right. Yeah. Completely true. I think it's helped me enjoy everything in Star Wars so much more. And of course there's things that are like not like my absolute favorite, but like I don't think I would have enjoyed Ahsoka as much as I did if I didn't just kind of like be like, yeah, I'm just gonna ride with this. I'm gonna see what happens, you know. And of course, we had our theorizing and stuff like that, and we still will. Like, that's not gonna change.
Always. I'm gonna be doing Star Wars theories on my deathbed.
Yeah, like it's fun, man. But at the end of the day, I'm like, if my theory doesn't happen, like I'm willing to accept that if something different happens, it could be better than, or like I need to just kind of wait it out and see. Because we all had the expectation that Ahsoka was kind of just gonna be this one season, right? And now we're like, oh. Maybe not. Well, yeah.
You know, I think the something that makes Star Wars so special, especially for us, is the theories, because we know so much about this universe that it is fun to you know, guess and query about where they want to take the story next.
Yeah.
The only thing is that, unlike other people, we don't, you know, flip the table when we're wrong.
Right.
And I think that's the most important part about, you know, theorizing, is like, enjoy the fun part about it, where you're guessing about what happens next, but be pleasantly surprised if you're wrong.
Right.
You know, especially if
like,
it's done in a satisfactory way.
Right, like we had various theories about the finale of Ahsoka. We were like, oh, like Baylan is going to be the main person, Thrawn's going to get away immediately, blah blah blah, and then like they're all going to get back to the galaxy, or Ahsoka's going to stay there. No, it was Ezra got back home, and Ahsoka and Sabine both stayed. They basically swapped places, and now they are almost the direct parallel of Shin and Baylan. Shin is out lost in the wild, and Thrawn is back in. Like, the more I think about it, I'm like, I love that. I'm so excited for that, because we're gonna get more, and like, just that epicenter right there. I'm like, it feels so far removed from the main galaxy, literally, but also it makes me so excited, because I'm like, man, like that is gonna be our, like, you know, Heir to the Empire is gonna be very much our kind of like
blockbuster,
big battle, like, you know, like big main villain sort of thing. But then we get Ahsoka and Baylan and all those characters, and that's gonna be like our weird and wacky kind of like Force stuff. And I mean, listen, we love like anything that they introduce with the Force. I'm like, give me more.
We're called Mortis FM, you know.
Dude, literally, like, it could not be more perfect. Like, and the thing is like, I'm so glad that this is our title. It is ours to have Mortis FM, because we did not plan.
No,
we did not bank on the Mortis gods being in Ahsoka, or at least to a small degree at all. I was like, they might, but like, we just thought it was a cool name, because it's a cool place and it's a really cool story. And now we're like, yeah, we did that.
Yeah, naming it Mortis FM was not due to any prescience or like text messages from Dave Filoni, you know.
I wish.
Hit
me up, Dave.
Well, I think I never really expressed this, but I think I subconsciously felt this way, that I was almost disappointed that Thrawn was going to be a part of the show, not in the fact that, you know, anything to do with his character. I love Thrawn. But after seeing episode 4 of Ahsoka, and just having this incredible dynamic between Ahsoka and Sabine and Baylan and Shin, I was almost disappointed that Baylan and Shin were essentially going to be taking back seats, right, to like being the antagonist, because they are so interesting, and
they're
now,
the best characters in the show. Like, they're my favorite characters.
100%. And now I'm just so excited to have potentially a season 2 devoted to them being antagonistic forces, and just them. You know, like Thrawn's done. He's cast them to the side. He's doing his own thing, and I'm fine with that. I am so glad that these at the time are now different, you know, separate stories, because I think that that's what they deserve. Originally, I think, you know, I don't know, like you know, if you were to ask me at like Ahsoka episodes 1 and 2, I would say, okay, yeah, Ahsoka is definitely integral to Thrawn's like comeback story at this point in time. Now I feel very different. I feel like I am agreeing with Ahsoka here that that's not where she's meant to be right now. Yeah. Her and Sabine, you know, they did what they set out to do. They did their best. Ezra's home. It's, you know, it's going to be figured out.
Now, when Ahsoka says that, do you think she kind of has this feeling or this instinct in the Force that, like, the reason they're supposed to be there is because of what Baylan is doing? Like, there's almost, like, something telling her, like, she doesn't know what it is, in the same way that kind of she was like, I don't know where this is going to take us, but, like, let's find out sort of thing, is, like, she's kind of like, we're on Peridia, like, she may have this kind of innate feeling that, you know, they are where they need to be because of whatever Baylan is up to.
I think that's pretty much exactly the reason why she says that, because as we've seen from episode 5 onwards, Ahsoka became a very go with the flow kind of person.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know where we're going, but I'm cool with it. You know, that doesn't matter where we end up. Not in like a nonchalant kind of way, but in a go with the flow kind of sense. And so I think that she is now thinking of it in the sense that, like, if the Force wanted her to be back home with Thrawn, she would be there. But for whatever reason, her and Sabine are on Peridia with Baylan and Shin. And so I feel like she now thinks, or at least is in the mindset of, okay, this is where I'm meant to be. Let's see where this goes, especially because she saw Morai. Mm-hmm. And I think at this indicator. Point, I think at this point, Morai is almost leading Ahsoka, and that would be very interesting.
I view it as like a checkpoint. Like anytime she sees Morai, she's like, you know, she used to be kind of more puzzled, like, like this thing's been following me around. Obviously, she knows that she was brought back by the daughter's essence, but I think now, but in her white form especially, she's like, you know, like, oh, like this means something, you know.
Morai only seems to appear at key moments in her path.
Yeah.
And so I think with Ahsoka recognizing that, potentially, that kind of tells her, okay, I'm where I need to be.
Yeah.
It would be so great if Morai leads her to Mortis, and then Morai ends up turning into the daughter.
Right.
That'd just be so cool.
Yeah, dude. Like, there's so many. I've seen progressively more and more theories about, you know, obviously, I think we even talked about this last time, but like that maybe it's Abeloth calling out to Baylan. Because
would be absolutely wild.
Yeah, I talked about it with Tony the other day, and we were saying, like, I did not know this until very recently, that those books, those Fate of the Jedi books, were actually, the authors were working alongside with Dave because he was working on the Mortis arc at that time. And he was like, yeah, that works. Like, this is what I'm doing. I think this will make sense if you guys do this. So, like, Dave didn't have, like, he didn't create Abeloth, but he definitely had a pretty prevalent say and, like, you know, kind of teamwork with the authors of that, which kind of gives it some credence of it being a possible future, because as far as we know, all of the Mortis gods are dead. Maybe the sun is still alive. We don't know. Do we see the sun die? That's the thing, right?
Yeah, I believe the father and the son both get impaled at the same time.
Okay.
All of them do die.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too as to why the daughter's statue exclusively has been purged. I don't remember
I'm curious
where
what
I
if
saw
that means.
this.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. I remember. I'm curious as to where I saw this, but someone had theorized that it was because Peridia was inhabited by, you know, dark side worshippers, you know, because as we now know, this Night Sister temple either was Zepho or worshipped Zepho exclusively. One of their prophets named Kujet, who was a dark side specific. Kujet also has a temple on Dathomir. And so I wouldn't be surprised that when they were there, they destroyed this statue of the daughter, who is the symbol of Ashla, of light.
Possibly, yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the reasoning.
That makes a lot of sense. I was going to say, and maybe these could work in tandem, but I'm here thinking, I'm like, what if the statue is also destroyed in a symbolic way to say, like, not that the daughter is dead, but that the role has already been taken, that Ahsoka might be the new daughter. Like, she's already like destined to be the daughter, but the father and the son is still up in the air. I had seen theories that Baylan, obviously my prediction was that Baylan is trying to become the new father, but he's actually destined to become the new son, which I find interesting, but also I'm like, does that line up with how Baylan acts? I don't really know.
I don't know. What you said about Ahsoka being the daughter's statue being destroyed, being symbolism of Ahsoka being the new daughter, that could actually be a double entendre. It could be the thing that I said, and it could also be symbolic of what you say, because as the daughter is dying, she transfers her life essence to Ahsoka. We never see that happen with the father and the son, so spiritually they should still be alive.
Right.
Somewhere. And I would not be surprised if that was just kind of a symbolic sense of like the daughter is now living within Ahsoka, and so I mean, she technically is. Ahsoka is only alive because of that, so
yeah, I've seen basically people saying that like the new Mortis gods, if this is the route they go down, and I really don't know. I could see it for sure, but I don't know how it would go down because there's a lot of story obviously we need to get. But like obviously Ahsoka being the new daughter, Anakin being destined to become the father, he's the chosen one, bringing balance, and then Baylan actually becoming the new son in a way. But I really don't know. I don't know how I feel about Baylan being the son, only because to me, he doesn't feel dark enough. He doesn't feel like the essence of like someone who is in the dark side. Like, to be honest, Baylan, I do not see once in the show Baylan embracing really the dark side. He does some, like, I would say some bad things, but in my mind, he kind of walks the in-between a little. That's how I view him. Like, you know, he's got the black clothing, but we see him with that cloak of the black on the left and the lighter clothes on the right. But, like, he's always like, I don't want to kill you. Like, he's never giving into anger. He even shuts down Shin when Shin gives into her anger to try to kill Sabine. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. And that doesn't feel very dark side evil to me. Yeah,
I mean, I 100% agree. I don't think that Baylan is or should be meant to be the son, because I mean the son is the dark side. You know what I mean? Like, obviously
Sam Witwer's thought process to even further validate that point of him being the dark side. He said when he started doing his voice for the son, he embraced all elements of notorious dark side users. So when he's doing the voice, you can hear, of course, he's a little bit of Maul, but then he kind of goes into a little bit of Palpatine, then he goes into a little bit of Vader, and then he goes into a little bit of Dooku. And it's like, because they're all prominent members of the dark side, it's like the culmination of the dark side is bleeding into each of those characters, which I think is just really cool.
Yeah, and at the same time, I have a incredibly bleeding heart that I always feel sympathetic to the son. I mean, I don't remember if it was Sam Witwer or even Dave Filoni himself, but in like an interview, they basically said that like the son is meant to be sympathetic. You know, he's not like Palpatine. Palpatine is evil.
Palpatine is Satan, bro.
yeah. I do not inherently think that the son is evil, or at least not to the extent of Palpatine. The son is the dark side, but the dark side isn't inherently evil itself. It is just an embrace of emotion. A lot of that has to do with selfishness, but it is just an embrace of emotion.
Right.
And so, I don't... Though I think that Baylan could fit like the role of, like, I don't know, being a dark side user, he really does walk the line. We don't see him do that. He really doesn't give in to his emotions at all. Like, he's got those core Jedi tenets.
Yeah.
I mean, the only time he gives into his emotions, I would say, is probably in episode 4 when Ahsoka briefly taps into the dark side to push Shin aside, and in anger, Baylan lashes out at her.
But that was unwise.
Yeah. And so, like, he has those moments within himself where he taps into it, but he's not... I don't think that is something I don't see that in him. And as to who would be the son, you know who I'm thinking. But I don't.
If it ever happens.
Yeah, I feel like I don't even know how Starkiller would manage to fit into season 2 of Ahsoka. He would just show up.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I was again talking with Tony this past week, and first of all, I was saying it'd be really cool if we, in the next season of not Ahsoka, sorry, the next season of Tales of the Jedi, we actually get a couple episodes of Balin.
That would be
as a Jedi.
so good.
And we get to see in one of those episodes at least him recruiting Shin, taking Shin under his wing and seeing him going from Jedi all the way to kind of what directly leads him into Ahsoka.
Dude, I think now that you say it, I think that's gonna happen.
It's gotta, right?
Because Tales of the Jedi was 6 episodes, I believe, 3 devoted to Dooku and 3 to Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. Imagine 3 episodes being devoted to Balin, right? Him as a Jedi, him as a general, and then him recruiting Shin. Yeah. That would be so good. I would eat that up. Oh my god.
Yeah, man. Tony also said a very interesting theory that I think would make perfect sense in the way that Balin acts, of course, splintering in his own thoughts, that his master might have been Plo Koon.
Ooh.
Because Plo Koon is a very like humble and kind of like he's a pretty based Jedi, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I like the idea of like Balin being like in a different time, he would have been more like Plo Koon, but because of the like kind of like him being almost more of a general than I don't know. That is just like, it doesn't really matter who his master is, but I think it'd be very interesting to see, yes, Balin in Tales of the Jedi.
He's got a similar cadence, like the way that he talks.
Right.
I can see it.
He's very gentle. He's a very humble. But he's very, very realistic. And he's not someone who gives into uncompassionate tendencies, I guess, like he's still like, multiple times throughout the show, like he tells Morgan Elsbeth like he doesn't want to kill Ahsoka. Like,
he's like, he expresses regret with the idea of it.
Like he just doesn't, it's just not in his nature to, like, he has a destination that he wants to do that is grander than just killing Jedi or whatever. But yeah, that'd be really cool. I don't know. I hope in Tales of the Jedi we get more content with that, or just more episodes. But I think Balin would be like, because it's not necessary to his story, but it just adds this really cool, like, with the Dooku episodes, right? Like, it's not like you don't need to see those episodes to understand Dooku's character. But it's really cool if you do,
Yeah, it's like it's just like a dessert, It's
right.
It's not necessary after the main course, but boy, does it taste good,
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, I honestly, like, I don't feel like there's anything like specifically like I think I need to get into Ahsoka about, like, other than I really enjoyed the show and I'm very excited for the future, and it was such a treat week to week to just watch a really cool Star Wars thing. I don't know, it just felt kind of like, it felt the most linear in story of the ones that have been done by Filoni and Favreau,
Yes, it felt like a proper return to form, I think.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that, and I liked the kind of the Legends vibes that it gave off, like it just felt a lot like, those Jedi Knight games I played and KOTOR and all of that stuff. It just kind of felt like Star Wars, but it had so much else beyond it, beyond the Skywalker saga, and I think that's just what I liked about it the most. And dude, the lightsaber fights are so good.
Man, the choreography went crazy.
I don't know. People have been like, listen, you're entitled to your own opinion. I cannot preface that enough. I am not someone who hates other people's opinions, but I simply just don't understand. There are a lot of people that hate these kind of style of lightsaber fights where they don't like how weighted the lightsabers are. They want them to be like the prequels where it's like tip tap, like very fast. And listen, I love those fights, right? do not get me wrong, and I think we will get more of those fights in something like the Acolyte, where it's the High Republic Jedi in their prime.
Yeah.
But I love I feel like Ahsoka especially really did this beautiful blend of prequel style fights and original trilogy and sequel style fights, where you get the weight and the ferocity of a lightsaber blade, and it feels like everyone has their own distinct styles. But it was not slow at all. Like, they're not slow-paced fights whatsoever. They feel like they're genuinely trying to kill each other. And I like that, you know? Like, it just makes sense to me. I don't know how you feel about it, but I really enjoyed them.
I mean, I think that it's probably my favorite variation of lightsaber fighting. I mean, you're right. It feels like a perfect blend of what made each era's choreography the best.
Right.
Not only does it have these flashy moves, but each movement is decisive and filled with intention and purpose, and it has weight. I mean,
and it's stylized to each character. Each character has their own like unique style of fighting, and I'm you and I are huge fans of that.
Right. And weight behind strikes, especially Balin's strikes. I mean, I think it makes it so much more personal.
Yeah.
You know, and that isn't to discount the prequel fights at all. I mean,
we love them.
I love Obi-Wan Qui-Gon versus Maul. You know, I love Yoda versus Palpatine. I love Anakin versus Obi-Wan. I mean, those fights go crazy. But it's just something about the way that these fights are done in Ahsoka, and I think the sequels as well, like especially Rise of Skywalker. I really liked that fight between Rey and Kylo on the wreckage of the Death Star. There is flash and there's pomp, but there are like these decisive strikes and blows. And you know, you can think about it from a lore sense as well. Like people complain about the difference between the OG fights and then the prequel fights, but if you want to think about it, in the prequels, these are, you know, the Jedi at the top of their game. This is the zenith of their order.
And right now, they are literally, their primary focus is to fight. That's what they're in a war, so it makes sense why their lightsaber skills are literally at the top of their game.
Yeah, they have done nothing but train and cultivate these skills, whereas you can also appreciate the way Ahsoka's fights are done, because essentially, I mean, to kind of quote the Imperial officer, the religion is dead. You know, it's their order is gone. You only have a very select few amount of warriors left. And so if you're face to face with a guy that got out of Order 66, braved through the Inquisitorius, managed to outlive the Empire, you're going to want to be careful with how you fight. You're not going to want to zip, zap, zip, zap. You know, you are going to, I mean, quite literally shown in episode 4 when Balin and Ahsoka, you know, unsheathed their lightsabers. They're sizing each other up, you know, testing their stances. You don't survive this long without knowing how to fight. So obviously you're not going to go in, you know, for a lack of a better term, lightsabers blazing, right?
Right.
So there is a way to appreciate all of them. That was kind of tangential, but
it was a really good thing. It's one of my favorite things about the show. And I think for people who are like, man, they've been hating on the fights, I was like, watch episode 5 and you can see Anakin fights literally the exact same way he fights in the prequels. There's no difference. That is Hayden Christensen swinging around his iconic lightsaber for like an hour straight, and it's great.
And when he turns into, you know, like his Vader form, it turns more into, you know, fighting like Vader. So
I'm like, listen, they got it completely right. Like, let's just
you lack conviction,
dude. So good, man. And I want to, Cole, did you think Ahsoka was fan servicey? Do you think it was a fan service show?
No, that's, oh man.
Listen, yeah, I was saying this to somebody, and I was like, there is a difference between blatant fan service. Fan service is not a bad thing if it is earned and it is benefits the story. right? There's a reason, and it's they got the like a negative connotation of like when a character that we all know shows up, oh, it's fan service, right? And it's like, dude, yes, is episode 5 like a bunch of Clone Wars stuff? Yes, but it's not just straight like I'm not hating on Kenobi, but it's not just like the flashback between Obi-Wan and Anakin where it's just a flashback. These are these really cool visions where it was in an interview very recently where Ariana Greenblatt was talking about how she was watching Clone Wars episodes and like kind of see what she was like, but she said she had to kind of also study Rosario because it's Rosario's Ahsoka in little Ahsoka's body, right? And there is an arc being told there, and it's like I would be like, yeah, it is fan service if it was literally just like, here's 1 hour of a Clone Wars flashback or whatever. But that's not what it is. Like, it's really not. And I think people need to be able to see past that. Like, people are like, oh, Rex is in this episode. It doesn't make any sense. I'm like, he's in the episode for literally 8 seconds, man. He doesn't even take his helmet off. Like, that's it. Like, it's just a cool little Easter egg thing.
They're acting like Anakin shows up and he looks at the screen and he's like, this is where the fun begins, and he does this massive wink, you know? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you upset that the most integral character of Star Wars is showing up on the screen, especially when he's referring to his apprentice?
Yeah, the main character of the Star Wars.
again, and I've said this for numerous episodes now. Why are you mad? And I mean, it is laughable at this point of just how angry people will make themselves for no reason.
They want to be mad.
Can you imagine waking up and going like, I want to go on Twitter and flame the Ahsoka show right now? I'm going to spend 2.5 hours doing that. Oh, why?
Yeah.
Who cares?
And it makes it, I feel like people are really just dooming themselves to hate it. Like it's like they're going out of their ways to be like, you know, oh, well, I really liked Clone Wars and I really liked Rebels and I liked I liked Mandalorian, but like Dave Filoni kind of sucks. And I'm like, what?
Have you seen that meme, like that reaction meme where like someone says something and it's to this group of people huddled around together talking about something they like, and this guy pokes out and gives them a thumbs up and then they just go back to talking?
Yeah. Yes.
That's what this feels like. If you genuinely did not like Ahsoka or you didn't like Anakin's appearance in it, that's fine. You know, I understand that. There's always going to be some parts about Star Wars that you don't enjoy. I personally didn't enjoy that Palpatine came back in Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
You know, but I'm not staying up every night tossing and turning because he's there. I didn't let it get to me that much.
Yeah, you really didn't. I remember when Rise of Skywalker finished, and I think, you know, Star Wars has always been a very tumultuous thing. When the original trilogy came out, it was like, oh, my Star Wars is like, I don't think anybody disliked Empire Strikes Back, but they were like, I think it was Return of the Jedi hit, they're like, this stupid movie with these dumb teddy bears, bro. They've made it for little children or whatever. And they're like
ruined Star Wars for me.
Yeah. And then the prequels came out and they were like, man, this is like ruined Star Wars or whatever. And it's just every project, it's the same cycle over and over and over again. And it's
according to these guys, Star Wars has been ruined like 1 billion times.
Star Wars died, it's 2023. It died 40 years ago. Like, you know, it's just, and I just don't see the point in almost just, again, not opening your mind and trying to love the thing that you say you love. If you love Star Wars, try to love it. God knows there's things that I don't love about Star Wars. Like, there's certain things that I'm kind of like, meh, like that, you know, not great, but I move on. I'm not sitting here like, God, dude, I hate Star Wars because that one project ruined everything for me. Do you know how much Star Wars stuff is out there? I have literally like 15 plus books on my shelf, and I have comic books, and I've got audiobooks, and I've got video games, and I've got a lot of Star Wars stuff that I love. And you know what also happens is, let's think about the prequels for a second, right? People did not like how quick Anakin fell to the dark side, right? And so the Clone Wars did this amazing thing where, first of all, you're getting the depth of the clones and the introduction of Anakin's Padawan and all these different cool, like what we said earlier. But you're also covering this 3-year time gap, 2 to 3 year time gap, where you get to see more of Anakin's fall to the dark side.
So well.
Like, and what the Jedi did to contribute to the problem. I believe what we are seeing now is, of course, I would say more people dislike the sequels than like the sequels. I think that would be a statistic take. It may be like a 60-40 split of like 60 dislike and 40 like. I don't know. I have not taken the census. I'm sorry, guys. But it doesn't matter. What matters is we are now in this era where I believe Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are like, all right, you missed 30 years in the timeline, right? A lot happens in 30 years. Think how much stuff happens in just 2 months of your life, right? Let alone 30 freaking years. And Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are not dummies. They are smart people.
Yeah.
I said this to Tony the other day. I was like, anything that I think has been in their projects that has, like, you know, Grogu and Ahsoka and Luke and Mando all showing up in Boba Fett, I don't think that was their decision. I firmly believe that was a Disney decision. They were like, we need to sell more toys, and we need to get them back together ASAP, right? Because we need to fast track this, right?
Yeah.
I don't see that, like, you know, I do think, of course, like, they were going to make them reunite, but they did it quicker than they wanted to. Like, Tony made a good point. Jon Favreau said before season 3 even finished that season 4 was already written. My theory is that, like, season 3 and 4 was like kind of maybe like one season, and then they ended up having to like condense it down. And anyway, I'm going on a whole rant about Mandalorian. What am I trying to say right now? Oh my gosh, I've completely lost my train of thought. I went down an entire rabbit hole.
There's some of Star Wars for everybody.
Right. And yes, there's some of Star Wars for everybody. And if you don't like something, that's okay. And what I was going to say is that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, I think, are really trying to bridge this gap between episode 6 and episode 7, where the people who didn't like the sequels can kind of at least make some sense of it, you know? When that line hits in Rise of Skywalker where somehow Palpatine returned, is it still going to be silly when the timeline, the gap has been closed? Yes. But at least from watching Bad Batch and watching The Mandalorian and all of this stuff, at least it'll make some sense, right? At least you can be like, all right, you know, I can appreciate this or whatever. And like I said, like you said in the very beginning of this episode, if I wanted to tear apart every single project in Star Wars, I would. But I don't want to, because I love Star Wars. And you love Star Wars too.
I do. We could tear this apart. We could tear it limb from limb. There is so much that I could trash on about every single part about Star Wars. But I mean, I would be so miserable if I did.
Yeah.
That's honestly just the thing of it. Like, you're actively making yourself miserable. Why don't you just focus on the things that you like? Yeah. It's okay to not like things, but why are you letting it bother you so much?
Yeah, I've had to help some people out where, like, I've kind of brought the analogy of, like you said, with the sequels kind of challenged our ideas on some of Star Wars, and it's like, I've been able to accept that. Like, it doesn't mean that I love everything, but I'm able to accept it. Like, you know, when we finished watching The Last Jedi, I immediately, like, was like, oh, maybe I didn't like that, right? But now, over time, I've been able to go and be like, okay, it was not what I expected it to be, and that's okay. And so when I see people that don't like Ahsoka, I'm like, listen, like, I've been in this position before where I'm like, you know, maybe I didn't like it as much, but I at least tried to like it, and that made me like it more, and that made me continue my love for Star Wars.
We even had this moment, like last week or so, about the end of Mando season 3. Mm-hmm. Like, we're always finding ways to appreciate different parts of Star Wars. So, I mean, yeah, honestly, just find ways to appreciate it. But I'm glad that I don't have to do that for Ahsoka. You know, like, I don't even have to try to like it. It's just something that is inherently enjoyable, you know?
Right.
Like, with all of these other kinds of projects, I mean, not all of them, but some of them chiefly in like the past decade or so, sometimes you have to think about them in certain ways in order to enjoy them. But with Ahsoka, that just doesn't happen for me. Like I just like the show.
Yeah, I think honestly the only limitations that are put on the show, I would say, are just the Disney Plus TV budget. And that's because we keep going back to Andor, but like Andor, they don't have like they have like the episodes when they like, a lot of episodes are not like these big, sets and settings and landscapes and what have you, whereas Ahsoka is kind of the opposite, where you've got the capital of Lothal and you've got Peridia, and so they have a lot more of like a grander scale, and really that's the only limitation, is sometimes you can kind of see like the budget, like they've only got so much, they got to work with what they have. But I'm able to put that sort of stuff aside, because that's just in the same way you mentioned earlier with like Luke, kicking, like doing the Force kick and the Praetorian Guard dropping the thing, or even in movies you're kind of like things can, it's the limitations of the real world, and like you forget like these are real people are making this, mistakes happen. Like you remember in like Mando season 2, the jeans guy that was in the background?
Oh my god, the jeans guy.
Yeah, he was like just standing on the end of a corridor.
We love jeans guy.
I think I've seen people do a cosplay of that where they're literally just like just like the jeans and that's it. But like that sort of stuff happens, and like I think they've also, like, with Disney Plus shows, they've gone back and, like, I mean, of course, like, with the jeans guy, they quickly fixed that. But, like,
oh, yeah. Patched up
it was like
fast.
Remember, like, also, this is not Star Wars, but, like, Game of Thrones when they left, like, the Starbucks coffee
I
mug
was thinking
thing.
the exact same thing. it happens. I mean, and also people would use that as, like, an example as to why Season 7 flopped.
Yeah.
And, like, that's not true. Season 7 sucked, but that's not why it flopped.
Yeah.
Mistakes like that happen.
Mistakes happen, man. And that's like, I would not say I have like a extensive filmmaking background, but like I've been part of like short films and things that were in more of an organized caliber, and like those things are stressful, man. Like movie sets and TV sets are stressful. It is easy, like, for the little things to slip through the cracks, and so plus, like, when it comes to, like, the visual effects and stuff, I really am able to, like, let certain things slide just because I'm like, listen, I don't know how to do that, all right? These people are putting in overtime in this visual effects. Like, visual effects is most of the budget on these projects nowadays, and it's like, I've got, when I get, like, amazing, like, visual effects of, like, the eye of I almost said, again, like we did when it first, the eye of Sauron, eye of Sion taking off, and it looks absolutely incredible. Like, I can let it slide when, like, Ahsoka jumping out of the ship in episode 7 looks a little goofy. It's like, it is what it is. I
mean, it's always gonna look a little goofy, man. Like, it is. It's more than fine. Yeah, it's definitely okay.
I'm chilling. I'm all right with it. The last thing, kind of a like tangential thing, but the last thing that I wanted to mention, and we'd kind of mentioned it a little bit before of like what we liked about the show, but I love the way this show approaches the Force.
Yes, 100%.
And I have seen listen, I don't even care at this point. I have seen so many whiny losers talking about how they're like, yo, it is such BS how Sabine can use the Force. And I'm like, did you even listen? Did you even watch the show? Like, it boggles my mind, because like the only like give in that, as I was like, Sabine, like, as soon as she does access her potential in the Force, she's able to use it pretty seamlessly. But like, the Force is one of those things that, like, when you are genuinely like in the moment and like you are really like depending on it, like, and your focus is all on it, it's like, it's really easy to like be able to like, you're like, again, you're living in the moment, you're living in the presence of the living Force. Like, whereas like Sabine in earlier episodes was just trying too hard, and it was like a mental block for her, right? So like, I love that like Sabine is Force sensitive, and and she's easily like by the end of the show stood out for me as like one of my favorite like little character arcs, you know, of being like very self-destructive, and now she's kind of found her purpose in the Force and was able to get really her brother back home, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was I really think that the way that the Force was presented in the show was just done in such a great way. Honestly, like the only thing that I wish is that her being able to use the Force was probably executed a little bit differently. Like, like I would have preferred for the moment of her using the Force to not be to save herself from the Death Trooper, but to instead push Ezra and get him home. If that was the moment, like, if it was all about, you know, Ezra was like, dude, I don't know about that, and then she just believes in herself that she can do it. I think that would have been such a better payoff just for her character.
That's true.
But that's, I mean, that's nitpicking, you know. Like, I think it was still, especially in the earlier episodes, like with her and the little teacup, basically.
Yeah.
About
you win this time.
You win this round, you know. And then Ahsoka explaining how it's manifested within people. It's very good.
Yeah, it's consistent with like a great references, which I don't know if it will be retconned or not, but the Rise of Kylo Ren comic is a really good one where it kind of Luke is explaining to one of his students an exact same thing where like Ben Solo has a very innate natural talent in the Force. You know, he's the grandson of Anakin Skywalker and the son of Leia. He's naturally going to be able to use the Force very efficiently. We see this with Jason in the Ahsoka show. Like, hasn't had no training, and he has a very natural bloodline-based talent. Sabine was not like, I don't even think Sabine thought she would be able to do it. She's kind of like, why am I being trained, you know? But Ahsoka, like, also kind of keeping in tone with her arc of like believed in Sabine and stood by her, and it paid off. I really think it did. And like, I guess I agree with you with like, I think it would have been cool if, you know, the moment she used the Force was when she pushes Ezra across. But also, like, I don't even know if she would have been confident in herself to be able to do that. So it's kind of like a paradox where it's like a, you know, chicken and the egg sort of thing, where I was like, I don't know if Sabine would have been able to do it if she had not just done something like that to save herself. So it's like, I could go either way on it. I'm not really caught up on it.
What if it was done in a way that was like, he tried to jump on his own, like he thought he could make the jump, and then when she realizes that he's not going to, she then instinctively pushes. And then it's like an instinct, you know, like a feeling, just kind of, she does it in the moment, doesn't even think about, can I do this? She just does it.
Yep.
So
that would have been cool, you know.
Yeah.
But I think you could even say that that's exactly what she goes through in when she's being attacked by the Death Trooper.
That is completely valid. So
yeah, like she's like she literally, she doesn't even think about it. Like, she's struggling and she immediately reaches out her hand to get her lightsaber, like she could do it the whole time, right? So
yeah,
there we go. Maybe we solved the case ourselves.
Mortis FM, and there you go.
And that's, I think, what's also like a really cool, like, this sounds so like tooting our own horns. I'm not trying to do that, but like, this is something that we actively try to do. Going back to what we said, is like, we're always thinking of ways of like, you know, like, you messaged me the other morning, right? And you were like, it always bothered me how like how Anakin and Obi-Wan would just like in Kenobi just train with their lightsabers or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, isn't that like super dangerous or whatever? And you had forgotten that in Rebels, Kanan and Ezra would put their saber on like training mode, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, and so when you seek out those answers, or even just try to piece the puzzle to like in your own head, it feels rewarding, you know. I don't know, like, I just kind of love doing that stuff, and it's just because we love Star Wars. Like, we want things to make sense. Not everything is gonna make complete sense, because again, it's just real people making this, and real people make mistakes. That's kind of what humans are all about. But like, it's fun to be like, to think of reasons, and like, some people could say, that should, like, the audience shouldn't have to do that, right? That's up to the creators. And I'm like, yes, maybe, but Star Wars has kind of always been this way, and so I'm naturally okay with that, of, like, you know, finding ways to kind of fill in the gaps myself, because I love Star Wars.
Well, as a longtime fan of the Dark Souls video game series, like franchise, those games are specifically like the way that their stories are told is in pieces. It's meant for the player to put it all together. It's not presented to you in that, you know, point A, point B kind of thing. And so I think that has really got me to the point where I get a thrill out of finding out these answers for myself. You're right, it's like a puzzle. You know, when you put together these pieces, you're like, oh, that makes sense. That's cool.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, just like things that you are unsatisfied with in Star Wars, you can find a way to be satisfied about that.
Right.
Simply by looking at them from a certain point of view.
Oh! The thing.
So, I love Star Wars. Yeah,
By
that's
looking
all
at them with a Mortis FM. That doesn't
By,
work.
by looking at them with a Star Wars. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Other than that, like, I don't really have much else to talk about. I think we talked about kind of just the retrospective, how we feel about the show, things that we liked about the show, where we're hoping it's going. I think we covered all the kind of important bases there.
Bottom line, Ahsoka, good. Season 2, yes.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Amen, brother. Amen.
There you go. In fact, I really hope that there is one person out there that just skipped to the end and just so happened to land on that perfect line. And then they got all they needed. They were like, okay, great.
Honestly, that's going to be the title of this episode. I'm going to literally just be like, Ahsoka good. Season 2, yes. That's literally going to be the episode. Man, I love it when a plan comes together. All right. So we've talked about Ahsoka, and like Cole geniusly said, we're gonna do this card thing. We're gonna pull one out of my little box here, and we're gonna talk about it before we wrap up this episode.
Let's look at the cards.
But before we do that, please follow and rate whatever you're listening this on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever you're on. I love you, and so does Cole. Isn't that right?
That's 100% right. I love it.
Fantastic. You can also follow us on Instagram at Mortis FM, and you can follow me at Schrates38. And Cole, where can they find you?
You can find me at And the Force is with me.
It really is, guys. I'm telling you, it really is with him. Now, with that being said, let's pull one out. All right, so here's the thing. I didn't shuffle these cards, and maybe I should, because they're kind of in like categories. I don't know what color is which, so I'm just gonna ask, should I pull from the blue, the red, the yellow, or the purple?
Oh man.
Just a random. I don't know what they mean.
Pick. Okay, all right. Here's the thing. You're going on an impromptu date. Are you going to the bookstore, the movie theater, a restaurant, or the park?
Dude, let's go to the park, man.
You're going to the park?
Yeah.
It's yellow. We'll go for yellow.
Yellow. All right, I'm grabbing one from yellow. All right. It's card number 49. Wow, this is a cool question. All right.
Okay.
If the Kaminoans offered to use you as the template for a new batch of top-of-the-line clones, would you agree to it?
Oh, man. I think
thousands and thousands of you in the galaxy if you said yes.
I think the first thing that I would ask them is, like, are you sure that you didn't run those numbers correctly? I feel like you'd probably want to, clone somebody else other than me. Because, like, thinking of, I don't know, maybe they see something in my genetic makeup. That's a tough question, because like Django, especially in Legends, had a lot of situations where like that was tough.
Yeah.
Not,
You're also probably, I'm assuming you're getting paid a fat stack of credits.
yeah.
Like you're like good for life.
Man, everybody would know my face too.
Yeah.
Let's just say they might recognize my face. Do you have an answer? I'm still stewing on this.
Oh man. I mean, I'm assuming this is for an army. Like, I'm going to take it at face value. Like, Django's the DNA has run out of Django. They need new clones, and they're gonna get this 6'3" lug muffin right here, Grayson Schrader. Yeah, that's also one of those things where I'm like, yo, you got the right guy. Like, maybe you should get like, I don't know, somebody else. But that's a really like tough moral question. That's where I was like, like, you guys need to go listen to the episode with Tony and I, because the question was like complete 180 from this, where it was just like not like a deep question like this at all. Oh man.
I wonder if the colors are associated by difficulty or like more thought-provoking questions.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Like here's my dilemma. One, I mean, just the idea of there being not only more of me, but also condoning this kind of practice of creating these organic lives with thoughts and feelings and funneling them into a war as fodder. You know, it doesn't exactly feel right, but then at the same time, that's a fat stack of cash.
Yeah.
That's a lot of credits.
It's like, yeah,
And
I
guess
there's so many sub questions, like for you and I and like and some of our other friends, we ask a lot of hypotheticals to one another, and naturally all of us, especially you and I, are always like, well, like we have to ask for context, right? We're like, well, like,
yeah.
What is the army being used for? Like, is it like military, or is this for something else? Like, how many are they making? How much am I getting paid? Like, and it's like, when you start asking all those questions, it like changes things. So I'm just trying to take it as like in the context of Star Wars, of like, they need a new clone army, all right? They're asking me, they're paying me an absurd amount of money to use my DNA, and this is so tough, dude. Like, what a freaking stalemate.
You've got infantry Graysons, you've got commando Graysons, commander Graysons, spec ops Graysons, ARC trooper Graysons.
How tall is Tamora Morrison? I want to know.
We saw him very briefly from afar. I don't think he's actually that tall.
We did see him from afar. I forgot.
I might be wrong.
He's 5'9", so I mean he's not short. I'd say he's average height.
Man, okay. What if we thought about it in like the situation where it's like you don't have time to think about an answer, like you just gut punch, instinct.
I'm gonna say no.
Why?
The thought of like thousands of me possibly like dying, or like even me possibly being like replaced, right? And they're just, it's like, it's kind of like this whole AI debate thing where like, if you want to think about it in the real world, where it's like, you know, a lot of these big companies are trying to use AI to replace artists and actors and voice actors and even writers, right? And it's like, when I sign off on that, that means, in a way, my value as a human has decreased. And I don't really think it like that. Like, in this context of Star Wars, like, I think all of the clones are, like, they're all very different, right? But, like,
yeah,
there's a chance that, like, let's say, like, I fought in this war also, or whatever, like, I could see copies of me coming back dead. The existential crisis that would cause me to have of just, like, seeing a copy of me dead. Like, just like, I don't think that would be good for me and my mental health.
Yeah. I think even if in the moment I would, be kind of tantalized by the idea of that amount of credits, I still think I would say no as well. Just as like instinct. I would instinctively say no because that's just what my moral compass in the moment would tell me to say.
Yeah.
Because it just doesn't feel right.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, like, imagine like everybody knowing your face and your voice. Like, you are no longer unique. You may be the first one, but now there are thousands of you.
Yeah.
And those thousands, half of the galaxy hates. So like you could never go into separatist territory and show your face and not have some form of, I mean, you would always be recognized as the donor, or like the original the original form, I guess. You would never be like Grayson anymore. You would just be the first Grayson,
Yeah.
And also at the same time, like, yes, if not me, someone else would do it. But I cannot condone the idea of fostering a clone army.
Yeah.
Of myself, no less. Am I fine with, like, giving the clones, like, these lives and consciousness and letting them live? Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're literally being created to be sent out and die.
Right.
And after having seen the entirety of the Clone Wars and loving those clones and, like, watching them die and have feelings and, betray each other and everything like that, I wouldn't want to subject them to that kind of fate. They deserve more than that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think instinctively I would say no, but that's more of my, like, comprehensive answer.
Yeah, I think I'd have to think about it a lot, but yeah, if it was instinctive, I'd have to say no. I think I would just, like, the money would be nice, but it would just cause so many, like, morally weighted problems that I would just be like, I think I would just spiral. And,
yeah.
I mean, Django is, he a tough guy. I don't really think he thinks like that. And also, he likes the credits, so it makes sense for him to do it. But I'm like, I ain't no bounty hunter. Like,
I would have problems living with that.
Yeah.
I would have a lot of problems living with that. I think about it too much. That is a very, very good question.
Oh yeah, dude.
So
I just found out the back of this is in one of the categories. This is the category of technology.
Okay.
Yes.
So that makes things more exciting, because that means, like, any other card could have the potential to have that kind of weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the question that Tony and I did, which I won't say, you should go listen to that, was the galaxy. So there's a lot of
galaxy. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to find all of the different subcategories. Let me see, that was 49, right? Oh, sorry, no. Okay, this little book is I think this little book. Oh, wait, maybe I'm wrong. Hold up. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure this thing out. Oh, okay. So they kind of give you a little bit of context to the questions. So yeah, 49 is, if the Kaminoans offered to use the template, blah, blah, blah. And then it gives a little context. It says, in Star Wars Attack of the Clones, Jango Fett serves as the genetic template for the clone army. Jango is paid handsomely to share his DNA, but he has one other request, a clone of his own, whom he names Boba and raises as his son. So it's just context to the questions, but he was paid handsomely. Remember the Jango Fett game? Underrated, bro. Well, there's a little tease for what is coming in the future at the end of every episode of Mortis FM. So shout out to Kelly Knox, who wrote them, and then shout out to Star Wars Explained, who gave Cole the idea, who gave both of us the idea of doing these. So we're not completely original, but it's a really cool discussion to have, and it helps you get to know us a little bit better.
And suddenly, I feel like my voice is just so much clearer and more crisp.
Well, at this point, if you're already this far in the episode, you know that I have put something in the beginning to warn you ahead of time that we had some technical issues with recording this episode. So that is why there is a section in there that Cole's microphone was switched on accident. So bear with us, please. Like we said in this episode, people who make movies make mistakes. We are humble podcasters who also make mistakes.
There you go, full circle.
So thank you guys for bearing with us. Yeah, again, Mortis FM on Instagram. If you're whatever you're listening on, please subscribe, rate, follow us, and we appreciate it. Next week, I guess we should probably talk about what we're gonna do next. I don't even think if we know. We have a, you know what? I'm not gonna get into that. We're gonna figure that out on the side. Stay tuned next week. And actually, I should mention this. If you are listening to this before this upcoming Wednesday, which I believe will be the 18th, we will be on Diamond Figs and Star Wars Sith's live stream on Wednesday at 5 p.m. They were generous and gracious enough to have us on. So assuming nothing goes awry, we will be on there just talking about Star Wars, just hanging out, having a great time.
Yes, sir.
So if you want to go interact with us live, you can go hang out there. And again, go check out the episode that I did with Tony, and go check out the episode that Cole is going to do later this week.
You will see us there. And we cannot wait to interact
With you.
And also just interact in general.
May the Force be with you, my friends.
And with you, always.